Hi, welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith. In this video, we're going to learn the two-player game Neuroshima Convoy, designed by Ignacy Trzewiczek and published by Portal Games. Set in the same universe as Neuroshima Hex, one player is the Moloch robot army marching relentlessly towards New York. The other is the Outpost humans fighting to stop their advance. But only one can win, so join me at the table and let's learn how to play. To set up, first separate and shuffle the cards into two decks based on their backs. One player will be the robot Moloch army taking this deck. The other will take this one representing the human outpost resistance. These are the city boards, and each has a unique name and a number from 1 through 5. Arrange the boards in that order between the players, with the large green-backed numbers facing the outpost player and the red-backed numbers facing the Moloch. These white circles are the districts found in each of the cities, and they form a winding line from one end to the other. From the Moloch player's perspective, place this target token on the leftmost district. There are also strength, shield, deactivation, net, and demolish tokens, which you should place nearby. Now each player draws 4 cards from their deck to form their opening hand, and if you don't like what you have, you can return your entire hand to the deck, reshuffle, and then draw one more time. And that's the setup. In Neuroshima Convoy, players will use cards to trigger effects and deploy their armies into the various cities where they will battle for rewards. The Moloch player is trying to demolish every district, and if they can do that and have at least one robot remaining in New York, or one card left in their deck, then they win. The Outpost player wins by stopping that from happening. The game is played over a series of rounds broken into 6 phases, starting with the drawing cards phase. Here, each player draws 2 cards into their hand, so at the start of the game, going into the next phase, each player will have 6. If you ever only have 1 card left in your deck, you just draw that. And if you run out of cards, you draw nothing. Over the course of the game, you'll be discarding cards, so leave an area nearby for those. Just note that the discard pile is never reshuffled into a new deck, so when you run out of cards, that's it. Also, there's no limit to the number of cards you can have in your hand at one time, and players can count the cards remaining in either deck and freely look through either player's discard pile at any time. Next is the Moloch player's action phase, and there's 3 different actions they can take. They can take any number of them, any number of times, and in any combination, until they pass. And then it's the Outpost player's action phase. They get the same choice of 3 actions that they can take in any order and combination until they pass. So let's learn the 3 different actions. First, a player can occupy a battle station. The total number of units each player can have in a city is represented by their colored battle station numbers shown here. So in the city of Ziggy 1, the Outpost player can put up to 4 units, and the Moloch player can place up to 3. Each player has a variety of different cards in their deck, and the symbol in the bottom right corner will tell you what kind of card it is. For the Outpost player, this symbol represents a soldier, and this is a building. Each takes up 1 battle station when placed in a city. For the Moloch player, cards with this symbol represent robots that they can put in their battle stations. Before continuing with this action, I need to give you a quick tour of the cities. The city board that has the target marker on one of its districts is known as the active city. Now, over the course of the game, districts will be destroyed, and when a city's districts are all destroyed, the board is flipped over. Any undestroyed city that is not the active city is known as a future city. So here we have a destroyed city, an active city, and 3 future ones. When using the Occupy a Battle Station action, the player takes a unit from their hand and places it into any city that has not been destroyed on their side of the table. When putting multiple units in the same city, just align them one above the other. The order doesn't matter. Just make sure you respect the battle station limits. Before moving on, we should take a look at the information you'll find on a unit. First, it has a name. And the number of symbols here indicates the number of copies of this unit you'll find in the player's deck. Its strength in battles is shown here, and its skill is at the bottom. This indicates how the skill is activated. For example, this symbol means that the skill is resolved when the hunter enters a city. This includes not only when it's first placed, but also if it leaves a city and enters a new one. With the hunter, when it enters a city, it kills a chosen soldier. But keep in mind, skills on units only affect the city it's currently in. So the hunter couldn't kill a soldier at a different city. You also don't have to worry about memorizing the different activation symbols, because the text here at the start in all caps tells you that this skill resolves when the unit enters the city. That said, let's still take a look at how all the other skill activation symbols work. This is a permanent skill. That means it's always active as soon as it's put into play. Whereas this is a once per turn skill, so the player can only use it once during each of their action phases. To use this skill, the controlling player will have to discard a card, but they can do this as many times as they want, even within the same phase, as long as they can discard each time. Skills with these symbols activate when the side, whose symbol is shown, wins a battle. And this activation means that the skill will trigger if the battle is tied. Although you cannot use the Occupy a Battle Station action to place a unit into a destroyed city, and believe me, you wouldn't want to anyway, they can still get left behind there. And while in a destroyed city, you can no longer activate their skill. However, if you can find a way to move them into a city that is not destroyed, then you can start using their skills once again. If a soldier or robot is placed in or moves to a future city that has no opposing units, it receives a +1 strength marker in its color. And this bonus can be gained multiple times. For example, the Hornet has a once per turn ability that allows you to move it to an adjacent city. So we could move the Hornet here, there's no opposing units, and it gains another bonus strength token. Just note that Outpost buildings can never gain these bonuses. So I said there were 3 different types of actions. One is occupying a battle station. The other is activating skills, which we've also talked about. And the final one is playing instants. These show an exclamation mark in the corner, and both decks have them. However, they can only be used by a player during that player's action turn. And once you use them, they're discarded. Unless indicated in its effect, an instant can target any card in the play area. This is unlike unit skills, which can only affect the city they're currently in. We saw that units have strength values, and later in the round, a battle will take place in the active city. And the player who has the greatest strength there will win and gain an important reward. So as you're thinking about the flow of the game, remember the Moloch player takes their action phase first. This is their chance to play out as many units as they wish to, play instants, and activate skills. But then it's the Outpost player's action phase. So they can see how much strength their opponent has in each of the cities, and they can react accordingly. Perhaps they see the Moloch player has 4 strength in the active city. So they decide, well, I can just put 5 strength in soldiers on my side, and I know I'll win. But it's not quite as simple as that, because then it's the module's activation phase. Modules are found in the Moloch's deck and show this symbol in the corner. These can be attached to Moloch robots at active or future cities by sliding them underneath like this and keeping the values here exposed. Most, like this one, will boost the strength of a robot it's attached to, while others will provide skills that need to be activated. For example, for each card you discard, you can move a soldier at this location to an adjacent city. Just remember, modules can only be played and their abilities activated during the module's activation phase. Each robot can only have 1 module attached to it at a time, and these modules don't take up extra space. So in this city that only has 3 Moloch battle stations, we only have 2 of them currently occupied. It's also important to note that strength tokens only boost the unit itself, not the unit and the module. So this unit has 3 + 1 and 1 more for a total of 5 strength. After the module's activation phase, it's the end result of battle phase, where we go to the active city and each player totals the strength of their units there, remembering to include any modifiers. Speaking of modifiers, note that the strength of a robot cannot be reduced below 0, and token modifiers do not affect modules. So when calculating strength, follow these steps. Take the base strength of the robot, add any positive modifiers, then subtract any negative modifiers to a minimum of 0, and then add any modules. So in this case, we have a spider with a strength of 1, which gets boosted by +1 to 2, and then you subtract 4, reducing it to 0. and then it gets increased to 2 by the module. Let's pretend for a moment that these were the units in the city that was being battled over. The Outpost player has a total strength of 4, and the Molochs have a total strength of 3. So the Outpost player wins. Now the winning player resolves any of its unit skills in the city which trigger on victories. The heavy machine gun has a skill that says when an outpost wins a battle here, place a +2 strength token on a chosen soldier. That's going to make things a little more challenging for the Moloch player in the next battle that happens at this city. Now the winner claims the reward found on their side of the city. Here, it's this symbol, which means that the Moloch player has to discard the top card of their deck. The reward for the Outpost player here means that the Moloch player reveals the top 2 cards of their deck, and the Outpost player chooses one to discard, and the other one is shuffled back into the deck. And this Outpost reward means the Moloch player must discard the top 2 cards of their deck. When the Moloch win a battle, they always gain at least this reward, which allows them to place a Demolition Token on the next district beyond the one they are currently fighting in, which means that if they were fighting here, then you will place the Demolition Token in the next city on the next applicable district. If this symbol is a part of the reward, the Moloch player chooses an Outpost soldier at that city and discards it. However, they can't get rid of an Outpost building with this reward. After resolving all the victory effects, the battle for the current district is over, and regardless of who won, the fighting in that location has wrecked it. So you'll place a Demolish Token in that district and move the target marker to the next undemolished location. Remember, the Moloch player is trying to advance as quickly as possible, so that gives you a sense of the value of its reward. If the Moloch player had won while fighting in this active district, the reward here would also destroy this one. Then when we advance the marker, instead of it going here, it will jump ahead to this location, making this city the new active one. Some districts show a bomb symbol. As soon as one of these receive a Demolish Token, for any reason, you resolve the bomb effect. The explosion in that district first allows the Moloch player to choose and discard a soldier in that city. Then the Outpost player does the same to one of the robots there. Anytime a card is discarded, its tokens are removed, and any attached modules are also discarded. On a related note, some effects will allow you to take a robot or soldier back into your hand, but in those cases you still lose any tokens or modules that were attached. The final phase is called Moloch Convoy Movement, and it only happens in rounds where all of the districts in the active city have been demolished. First, the Moloch player chooses one robot in the destroyed city and moves it to the next one. This movement is mandatory. But if the other player has an effect which is preventing a unit's movement, you can't choose that one. Also, a robot moved this way into a city that doesn't have any opponents will not gain the strength bonus because this is now the active city, and that bonus is only given in future cities. If the robot trying to come in doesn't have space because the battle stations are already full, then it is discarded instead. After the movement, since the previous city is demolished, flip it over, removing any of the tokens on it. Any units in that city remain, and remember, units in a destroyed city cannot activate their special abilities. And now you start a new round. The game ends after all effects from the battle in the last district of New York has been resolved. If the Moloch player has a deck of at least one card, cards in hand are not counted, or at least one remaining robot in New York City, then the Moloch player wins, having successfully destroyed New York with units to spare. Any other result means the Outpost player has effectively destroyed the Moloch Convoy. The Outpost player can also win if at the beginning of any round the Moloch player has no cards left in their deck or in their hand, and none of their robots are deployed in any of the undestroyed cities. To wrap up, there are some additional rules we should quickly go over. For example, the hacker has a skill that lets it place Deactivation Tokens. These will disable a robot's skills, but not the effects of any attached modules. Other effects, like the one found on the EMP launcher, will disable the skills of the robot and its module, unless the module is providing a strength boost, because those cannot be disabled. The Brute has a skill that says when it enters a city, it can place a shield token on a target robot. Shields prevent a robot from being targeted by the skills of an Outpost player's units. For example, if the EMP launcher was placed in a city with the Hornet, and the Hornet already had a shield token, then its effect would not be able to target the Hornet. However, shields cannot protect you from the effects of instants. So if the Outpost player used this sniper that can kill a chosen robot, the player could target this Hornet. This is a net module. If it's attached to a Moloch robot, then during the module activation phase, the player can discard a card from their hand to place a net on a soldier in the same city. Now this soldier's strength and skills are ignored when totaling the strength for that city during the battle. The net only lasts for that round, and then it's removed. If an ability lets you move a robot or soldier, it can go forwards or backwards by one city, even into a destroyed one. But you can't remove a unit from play until it is killed. If you have a unit in a city and an opponent forces you to move it, let's say the Moloch player used this pushback instant, which allows them to move a soldier to an adjacent city, then if the moved unit has a when enters this city effect, you do not resolve it, because these skills only activate on the controlling player's turn. Finally, if the Outpost player would be able to discard a card from the Moloch deck, and there are no cards left, the Outpost chooses and discards a robot from the city where the discard was triggered. If there are no robots in that city to discard, then the Moloch player chooses a random card from their hand and discards that instead. If they have no cards in hand, then nothing is discarded. And that's how you play Neuroshima Convoy. At the back of the rulebook, you'll also find clarifications for how certain cards interact with each other, so if you're playing and you have questions, that's a good place to check. But if you have any questions about anything you saw in this video, don't hesitate to put them in the comments below, and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. But until the next episode, thanks for watching.